Good evening, everyone. My name is Saurabh Kumar, and I am head organizer of this webinar. Before starting this webinar, let's quickly check whether I am audible to you or not. Please raise your hand for some time if you can hear me. Please raise your hand. There is an option to raise the hand at the top right corner of your screen. I guess everyone has got the option to raise the hand. Please raise your hand. If you cannot find it, you can mention in the chat box that you can hear me. Okay, so I can see most of you have raised your hand. Great. Now you can put your hand down. Please put your hand down, everyone. Please put your hand down. Okay, so firstly, I'd like to thank you for joining this webinar on first step towards startup success. So this is the second lecture of our webinar series. In case if you have missed the first lecture on how to start a startup, you can watch the webinar recording on Edgistify YouTube channel. I have shared the YouTube link in the chat box. You can see in the chat box. Yeah. During the session, if you have any doubt or question, you can raise your hand anytime. Once you will raise your hand, I will unmute your line so that you can ask your question. Also, you can put your question in the chat section tab. Today we have Mr. Umang Shukla. Firstly, I'd like to thank Mr. Umang for giving us his valuable time. Umang has completed his graduation from IIT Kanpur. Currently, he is co-founder and director of Edgistify, which is one of the leading startups in supply chain and logistic industry in India. He was also a founding member at Pitstop. So let's start this webinar with question answer session. So you will see some question on your screen. Please answer them one by one. So the first question is, are you a college student or working professional? Please answer the question. Please answer this question. Are you a college student or working professional? Okay, I can see 50-50% ratio. Great. Okay, so the second question is, if you are a working professional, are you working with some startup? Please answer the question. If you are working with some startup, I guess everyone are able to see the screen. Please answer this question. Oh, many of you are working with startup. Great. Poll is still open. You can answer. Okay, fine. So most of you are working with some startup. Nice. So the third question is, did you attend our first lecture on how to start a startup? Please answer this question. Please answer this question. Oh, most of you have not attended. It means I can see some new audience today. Great. Okay. Thank you everyone for answering the question. Now I request Mr. Umang to start the session. Handing over to you, Umang. Umang.
Hello.
Yeah, you are audible.
Yes, Saurabh.
You can start, Umang.
Okay.
Yes,
So
yes.
thanks a lot, Saurabh, for your introduction. Really grateful, and I'm very glad that I'm here to present and guide or help. I think most of the guys who are on the poll are mostly, I think 50% are from the colleges, right? So I think for them it will be very relevant if they are an aspiring entrepreneur. So moving and also in the current times of COVID-19, I hope everyone's family and they are safe. Most of you guys must be, if you are working, should be working from your homes, and I think we don't know how long it will continue like this. So in the current times, I think when situations like these happens, it opens up a lot of opportunities as well. I'm not saying it is good for everyone, but for someone who has entrepreneurial knack, so I think for them it's a great opportunity right now to identify what are the problems which are there in the market, and I think they can actually focus on building some products and running a startup in something in areas where people are facing a lot of problems in current scenario. So I think some of you have attended the previous session, which was taken by Kamal. It was on how to start a startup. Uh, but I'll assume, and for guys who have not seen that video, I'll suggest go to our YouTube channel of Edgistify, and you can go through the video once and understand what are the critical things that you need to keep in mind when you are running or thinking of running your own startup. So secondly, this entire webinar will be focused around assuming that you have already registered your startup, you have created and identified a business model, you know what areas you are going to work for. Might be possible that you might not have actually devised what your product is going to look like, what are the features that it might have, but I hope this session will help you guys in taking that informed call. uh, so uh, so let's start. So basically we'll be talking about the fundamentals of associating and creating a startup, and building a product, building a team, hiring guys who are of similar mindset, and all that you'll get to learn in this session. So the topics that we are going to cover is there are two components. One is a very structural linked things like hiring, product, MVP, and sales and marketing. But the fourth component, that is setting processes, it is going to be common for all the other components as well, because processes is very close to my heart, and I believe for any organization, be it a startup or a already running MNC, processes are very key, plays a very key role in structuring an organization and structuring verticals within the organization. So I'll get into processes, because if I talk a bit more, I might get stuck on the process itself. So I'll start with the first component, that is hiring. And any guy who has started or registered his company or thought of running a startup faces a lot of challenge when it comes to hiring. So there are two components, two kind of strategies, and the approach is a bit different in both the cases. One is when you are hiring, let's say, a fellow co-founder, or you are associating with a fellow co-founder. Secondly, if you are looking for a team and your team strength ranges in between 0 to 5, what to look for at that stage. And then there comes 5 to 50, and what to look for, and how to create processes, and how to structure hiring at that stage. So as you might know that the session name has been very smartly named as Startup 0 to 1, in line with 101. But here 0 to 1 means a lot if you focus on that. 0 to 1 is, I'm not going to tell you how to exponentially grow your company, how to exponentially grow your startup. I'll be talking about taking it to a stage where you can actually represent it to your customers, to let's say VCs, funds, and get a feedback from them, and understand what you are lagging and where in which direction you need to move for. At the same time, building a product at till that level uh, where your customer is ready to pay you for. So I'll be talking about 0 to 1, not 1 to 100. That's a separate journey altogether. So when you are hiring for guys in range, when your team strength is in between 0 to 4, it is very critical for you to invest a lot of time with them. You cannot take a split decision. You cannot take a decision within a very short frame of time. You need to be thorough, understand, and look for candidates which you feel are below your current range. If you are they accessible to you or not? Because as a startup founder, you are the first salesperson of your organization, and if you're not able to sell your company to, let's say, to hire guys, I don't think so it will be very easy for you to when you're looking out for customers. So for you to hire, first you need to understand very clearly about your organization, what your strength team, what is the product that you are building for, what is the company that you are looking to build for. So that you need to understand pretty well. The culture fit component for 0 to 5 and 5 to 50 is different. For 0 to 5, founder in itself is the culture of the company. Whatever founders do uh, is the culture for the company. And in the longer run as well, whatever decisions, whatever approach a founder has while running the organization for 0 to 5, mostly those similar traits are followed up by your core team, and till you scale up to a very large level, the culture is defined by the founders itself. So you need to understand it pretty well, that the guys in the range when you are hiring from 0 to 5, uh, what you should look for into them. So when you're looking for, you should look for guys who are culturally fit. When I say culturally fit, they should understand the vision of your organization, as well as they should respect you. So if you are an aspiring entrepreneur, or you are thinking of joining a startup, for a candidate who is looking to join a startup at a very, very early stage, he needs to understand pretty well and very much in depth that he has to respect the founders. If he does not believe in the founders, he does not believe in the vision of the founders, I don't think so that company can grow further, because these initial five guys will define the next level of team that you guys will be building. So from the founder's perspective as well as from the candidate's perspective, you need to understand the culture of the organization, vision of the organization, and also understand what this organization stands for and what are the offerings that this company is working towards. Also, the critical component, what to look in a candidate, I'll always prefer and always suggest that when you are taking interviews, try to identify skills which cannot be taught. So I think there might be question, which are the skills which cannot be taught? When I say cannot be taught, I'm talking in terms of a very short term. So you need to look into guys, look for guys who are self-enthusiastic, motivated, have work ethics, they have discipline, they have achieved something previously in life, and they have that passion towards growth. So you need to look for those kind of traits which cannot be actually taught. They have to be inherently present within the candidate. So this is the most critical component. First is the culture fit. Second is this additional skills or different skills which the candidate have, which cannot be taught, because in the current information era, anyone can learn how to use Excel, anyone can learn how to understand finance, but these skills cannot be taught. It will take time. If someone is disciplined, they can learn how to use Excel, they can learn any platform. So please define it very clearly. Now, for 0 to 5, as I've clearly mentioned, it is all about you investing a lot of time and understanding the candidate. But as you move towards from 5 to 50, you need to have a very clear and defined hiring process. As I have already mentioned, the fourth component that I will be talking about today is process, as it is very critical for each and every component and each and every vertical. But in hiring as well, you need to understand what is the impact of that a process can create. First thing first, structure saves a lot of time. If you are structured, you have created a process, if you have created a structure within the organization, let's say even for hiring, it saves a lot of time for you, for your team members, as well as the candidate who is reaching out to you will not will not feel that he's being ignored or this organization is not professional. Because if you do not follow a process, this is the first impression that you're giving it to the candidate who is looking out to join you guys. So you need to have a very professional and structured approach when you are hiring. To save time in current COVID era, I think face-to-face interview is actually a thing of past for at least next 5 to 6 months. So it will be more about Skype, Zoom interviews, meet interviews happening over Meet. Uh, but even at any stage, you need to have a pre-interview questions. You need to have a screening process so that you save a lot of time. Let's say within your organization, the HR head takes the first call with the candidate and understand for a 5-7 minutes call if even if he's worth it to take further for the next step, so that you save a lot of time for yourself as well as for the candidate. Because if he's investing a lot of time reaching out to your, let's say, office location and taking 1 hour 2 hour of his time just to travel, then giving interview whatever time that takes within the organization when he reaches your office, in all that entire scenario he invests a lot of time. So you need to be very clear, do you want to ask him to invest that much time, or are you even okay for him to come down to your place if you could have actually asked him to not get associated with you, right? So you need to be very clear and try to optimize and save a lot of time for yourself. Third is the interview process. Now, after screening and pre-interview questions have happened, right? Now it is all about the interview process. Interview process has to have some components already structured which you need to follow, but at the same time, questions have to be defined very structurally basis studying the CV or resume of the candidate. You need to understand, since you are looking for guys who are culturally fit, you will have to get in depth within their resume. You will have to look out for things which will tell you a lot about how is going to fit within your company's culture. So it is very important for you to, while you are when you are going to take the interview, invest a bit of time, 4 5 10 minutes, just to study the resume and or CV, and on the basis of that creating some questions. Very critical. And result, what do you require, what do you want when this hiring process has completed? You should know things about candidate which are not in the resume, and at the same time, it is not only one way that you are not only judging the candidate is also getting to know about your organization. So you need to make sure when he leaves this interview, he should know about the organization pretty well, very clearly, as well as the job role which you were looking him to join, or to bring him on board within your organization. So this has to be very clear. Usually people forget that you only focus on hiring and you don't tell them about what you are or what your company stands for. So please make sure, because even though if he joins or not joins, if he understands your role, he might refer someone who might be right fit for your organization. So please make sure that you keep that in mind. So now the last point, which are the key points to remember. So don't rush into giving an offer. Very critical, very important. Reason: sometimes you like a candidate, you negotiate then and there with them, and you realize, let's say he negotiates, you give on to the god, and you need to judge that whatever you are offering, is it right or wrong? Is it aligned with the skill set that he's bringing onto the table for you? At the same time, what is your current need? So you need to find a balance between them. So never rush into giving an offer. Always think about it. Take a day's time, a minimum at a minimum, then go on and give the offer. Keep the process challenging. Why is it very critical? It is very critical, reason being, he should understand in what kind of organization he's getting into. It's not easy to get into your organization. You need to make it very clear to them. If you keep a process which is easy for them to crack or go through, or even though if you don't choose them, they might not find respect for the organization if it is very easy. So you need to make sure the process is challenging. Secondly, if you keep a challenging process, you will get guys who are good, who are very good. Okay, so the third point, while hiring, references play a very vital role. Take references from your friends, colleagues, try expanding your network. If you are not getting good candidates, the quality of resumes or talent pool that you are receiving is not good enough, I think you need to change your network. You need to reach out to guys. You should join some networking events where you should meet new guys. from where you can get some references. And the last thing, which is not related to hiring, that is firing. You need to make sure you fire very fast. Now, firing is usually, which is said, I think you should have a process where you don't even need, you should not require to fire someone, but you need to be very clear. You need to be very clear that if you feel that the guy is not bringing right things for you or for the organization, you need to fire him very fast. Reason being, one bad apple can actually create a catastrophe within the organization. The entire culture that you might have built, you would have invested to build, would be gone. It will not be of any worth, whatever efforts you have put in. And one more thing, even if you are not hiring, but always remain open to hiring. It's in itself, the statement is contradicting in itself, but you need to understand. You need to keep open to yourself to understand what kind of talent pool is reaching out to you. At the same time, you need to look for guys. There might be possibility that you might not require those candidates right now, but there is a high probability you might find some candidates which you will be looking to hire in future. So let's say if you have created some vertical within an organization, you should have at least that means you have been open to hiring. Reason being, if you get to know that, let's say if the vertical position has come into your mind, you must have 2 or 3 candidates in your mind that you feel that might fit the role. It's not necessary they might fit the role, but you should feel that they might fit the role. If it then it only it means that you have been open to hiring. Please make sure. So I think for this section we are done. Saurabh, if you can take questions, then we can.
Yeah. Yes, so I can see some question in chat box, Umang. So Yash had asked, what is the general expectation of a company while hiring a candidate?
Okay.
Umang?
I
Yeah.
think the what I have been trying to convey is from the perspective to make it very clear that companies should define what they are looking for from a candidate. But from a candidate's perspective, if company knows what they are doing, they should be they should define a proper and clear job description. So you will understand what kind of skill set they are looking for in a candidate by just reading and going through a job description which is well defined. So the skill sets you can get from them, but I think for an early stage startup, it is very critical that candidates should fit into their culture, which I was trying to focus a lot while I was presenting. Reason being, if the guy does not understand the vision of the organization, does not understand or believe in the vision of the founder, I think he will not feel happy working there. At the same time, he will not be productive enough or might not be able to add that much value which he might be able to add in an organization where he believes in the founder and the vision of the organization.
Okay, Umang. Yeah. So there is a question from Saurabh Rai. How do you ensure that your employees have the same passion for your startup as you do?
See, it is very important. I think you guys need to understand. It's a very good question, basically. See, for passion, I think there are 2 components. One is the vision and an alignment of vision. It is sometimes necessary that it might not be the case that the aim that you're looking for is not the aim of the candidate who has joined you or your team member. But you need to see if your paths align. If your paths are aligned, I think the passion will not be a problem, because passion is something which cannot be directly created within a candidate. Candidate needs to have that kind of an approach towards his work, but at the same time, it's the responsibility of the founder to keep their team members informed about where this company is going towards and what we are looking forward to in future. And even for the growth of the candidate, they need to tell them what they are expecting from him for their next level of evolution.
Okay, Umang. Yeah. So there is a question from Sonia. So when you are at the very initial stage of startup growth, then when do you realize that you should start hiring in your startup? And what should be the initial step to be taken to set up a hiring process? So this is very a long question.
Yeah, similar
Yes.
thoughts. So I
Yep.
think there is never a right time to hire someone. As I told you, you should always should always be open to hiring. You need to look at candidates from various angles, and once you define what you're building towards, I don't believe that you can achieve something with yourself, which a team of 4 or 5 similarly aligned candidate team members will not provide you. I think we'll never achieve what those 5 will be able to do. So from my perspective, it is always great to create a proper core team around you who believes in the vision of the organization and propels you towards let's say a high speed growth. So this is the first comment, and can you please repeat the second part of the question?
So, what should be the initial steps to be taken to set up a hiring process?
Yeah, so as I was telling you, so hiring process can be very simple, as simple as that, defining an email ID where you can actually ask candidate to send an email, defining who is going to do the first call, defining who is going to do the second call. Let's say defining what will be your pre-interview questions for XYZ kind of role. So process is something which is ever evolving. I can never say there is a perfect process which exists. There are always changes which are possible, and improvements which are possible. So a hiring process, as I told very clearly, that it can be as simple as defining the email IDs where to receive candidates, who is going to do the first call, where to take the interview, when to take the interview, when to start giving calls to candidate. Do you need to wait for a week, or should you call them right away, or the day that you receive the resume? So I think the process is as simple as that. So even a 2-step process is a process. Saurabh?
Okay, Umang. Yes. So there is a question from Bhuvnesh Rai. What is the role of technical knowledge in leadership and how it impacts hiring?
Okay, I think in current age it is very critical for founders to understand technology, because I don't see and I don't believe there can be any startup which does not understand or is not building their product from tech perspective, because the scale that technology brings in, not a single ops based organization can do, because that scale is actually not possible without the technology. So I think understanding technology and understanding product is very critical, and understanding technology from the perspective of the business or the industry or the product that you are building is very critical. It is not necessary that you should be an expert in technology yourself, but I think it is always better for you to invest some time and speak with your colleagues who are good at technology, and understand how technology can influence in the industry or the product that you are building. The second component of the question was, I think, from the perspective how it impacts hiring. I think when you
Yes.
are looking out to hire, you need to if you are not yourself not so well educated in terms of technology, I think you should take support from your colleagues or friends who are good at that, because then only right questions your team might be able to ask right questions to the candidate. Secondly, if you create a process, that's where hiring process plays a very vital role. Let's say if you are using some tools, digital tools which help you in judging a candidate on their technical skills, I think that component of you not understanding technology or not able to ask right questions will not be there. So that's why hiring process is very critical. And but for initial stage, I think you need to invest some time to understand which technologies or which component of technology will be influencing your product, and actually take help from colleagues or friends or consultants who can help you in hiring tech candidates.
Okay, Umang. Fine. So we will take up some question in Q&A session. You can continue your presentation, Umang.
Okay, guys. So
Yeah.
I think product MVP, that was what presented as the heading of this session. I think you need to understand what MVP is and why it is very critical. Guys, people don't understand usually what are the offerings, what are the features that they need to look at and call it a MVP. People usually confuse between prototype and proper MVP. And at the same time, there can be a bad MVP and a good MVP as well. So So you first, I'll just go about and give you a brief about what an MVP is, which you can find on Google as well if you try to find definitions for the same. So minimum viable product, that's the full form of MVP. It has core features, and there has to be that much features within the product that customer is willing to pay for it. So this is from the perspective of a B2B component, and as well as B2C, in which you are talking in terms of subscription. If it is an open source or marketplace kind of a platform, you need to be very clear if you are offering that services or the product has XYZ features, will customer pay for it, right? So this is a very short and very concise definition of what MVP is, but you need to actually understand it is not that easy to create an MVP, because there are multiple levels of research and efforts that you need to put in. Now, as I was telling you about what is prototype, difference between prototype and MVP. MVP is a prototype, but every prototype is not an MVP. So MVP, what it is just with the core features the product is developed, which is presentable to the customers, to various stakeholders for your product. But prototype can be as simple as that, having, let's say, if your product has minimum core features which is required for your product to be called an MVP is 10, and even if it has one or two features, it will still be called an MVP. It will not be called an MVP, it will be called an prototype, sorry. So this is very important for you to understand and define what a MVP is for your product or business that you are building towards. Now, what are the benefits of defining an MVP? Very simple. In very short terms, it brings focus. You can have X number of thoughts within your mind, but if you should know what to prioritize on the current in the current scenario. So you need to understand, if you create an MVP, it brings focus and also reduces remakes and reworking over the product. Because if you know what you're building towards and you have not created something which you have not brought in some features which actually customer is not willing to use, even though you might feel or you might think about those features as that they might be very awesome, but they might not be. You never know what customer likes until unless they like it, right? So you need to create, and then that's why there has to be a very proper process of doing it. So it highlights very critical drawbacks to you. Let's say if you create with the core features and you reach out to your stakeholders and feedback that you receive from them. So whatever these steps do, the core component of that becomes is that it saves money, and one component which is not written is it saves time. If you know that if you have created a product which is no one is going to use, you have wasted your time and money, because tech is tech is expensive. You need to invest a lot when you're building a tech platform. So these are the benefits. Now I have talked a lot about what MVP is, prototype, MVP, benefits, but how to go about creating MVP. See, telling the process in itself is very critical. You need to have very exhaustive feature list about the product, about the business that you're doing. You need to create feature list for each and every product which are there within your organization. And after you have created those exhaustive feature lists, you need to identify core features and prioritize which features to focus on first, because you cannot build everything in a day's time, right? It takes a lot of time and effort in building components of your product. So you need to prioritize and see which are the critical features which are very much relevant for you to call your product an MVP, or to even call your product a product. If there, let's say if there is let's say on Flipkart, you go there and you are not able to buy, there is an only inventory list information available that this product is there and available. I don't think so it will make any sense for the consumer. So buy feature has to be there in the product. So you need to understand, you need to prioritize without which all features are compulsory to be there in a product, and choose those features and build that MVP. Don't go about building some fancy features, because you never know, for you they might be fancy but for your customers they might not be. Then these two components you have done in a right way. The last component is the easiest component, but in itself it's not easy. That is designing and start development of the product. So That's it on the MVP. If there are, Saurabh, I'll take questions on this slide as well. Then we'll move towards the third.
Okay, Umang. So I can see some hand raised. Bhuvnesh Rai. Bhuvnesh, I have unmuted your line. You can ask your question. Bhuvnesh?
Yeah, yeah. Am I audible?
Yeah,
Yes,
Bhuvnesh, you
yes.
are audible.
We can hear you.
Yeah, my question was as you are telling about MVP.
Yeah.
First thing I wanted to know is how to start testing the product, because as you said, it takes a lot of investment, and if you decide, I agree with the point about prioritizing the features. But if you build 7 features and in the end you come to know that 3 were not needed at all, so how would you prioritize before making your customers use it? So
Hmm.
I'm working on some project, but I'm not finding that easy to
Okay.
make people use an unfinished product to figure out whether this feature is actually as useful as I'm thinking or
Hmm.
not. So, what's a
Hmm.
good way to test a feature without denting your reputation and without making your customer think like that you're just using him as a lab rat, something like that.
Okay. So the very critical component of building a product is brainstorming and brainstorming with your stakeholders. So you need to identify, you need to find stakeholders which are actually willing to be your lab rat at the very initial stage. Even if you have created a wireframe or let's say designs for your product, I think you should go and reach out to, let's say, at least minimum 10 to 15 to start with, 10 to 15 guys, and take their genuine feedback. Try joining networking events, try joining communities where people are willing to provide you feedbacks. There are these kind of communities. I think in current times it's things have become much easier. Even some of the startups have started platforms where founders can connect and network and also discuss about their business models. So uh, from my perspective, it is very critical for you to do a proper research. See, it is all about critical. It is from a perspective, it is very critical for you to understand the business that you are building, and you need to have a very proper in-depth understanding of the industry that you are getting into. It does not mean that you need to have experience in that industry, but you need to invest some time to understand that industry and understand the stakeholders which are there in the market. So it is very critical you do brainstorming with the stakeholders as well as the guys who are actually interested in providing you uh, uh, right feedbacks.
So the follow-up question on the same line was that I think your product is also something which is bringing something which was happening offline to online, something like
Right,
that.
right.
So I mean, is it a good way to go about building processes and doing everything offline first, and if it starts working and then you take it to online?
See, if your product makes sense now, I think if you even build a offline process, people will be willing to take your services. So I'll give an example from Edgistify's point of view itself. What we did was when we started the warehouse aggregation and all the digitization of the entire logistics industries, I personally, because I was taking care of sales components, so I personally reached out to 350 head of supply chains, and you will not believe that out of these 350, more than 300 responded with a requirement, with a need that they had. And it was not the need for the product, it was the requirement which my product is going to fulfill, is of providing a warehouse. The warehouse as product that we have built is about providing warehouses to the company with the uh, most easiest way or approach possible in the current scenario globally. It's not only in India. So that was and what I'm trying to convey is that out of 350, 300 were interested with the offering that we were providing, and I did not even talk about the product. I did not talk about the warehouses product that I built. I only talked about the service that my product is going to offer, and they responded by giving me a requirement. So what I want to convey is that you need to speak with those stakeholders, you need to speak with these customers and take the feedback from them directly. So what do they feel that यार इसका कोई sense बनता है कि नहीं बनता है? There can be cases where if you reach out in these 350 there were 10 guys who said arey kya kar rahe ho, it does not make sense, there are a number of players which are in the market. But that is fine, you will find every kind of people in the market, but you should be able to identify is from the feedback that you're getting from the customers, that are you moving the right direction or not. See, it's a lengthy process, and lengthy in terms of it's a continuous process. You need to keep on taking feedback from your stakeholders regarding the features that you are building. Let's say if you are building a feature in our platform, there's a feature that we have created of templatizing requirements, and actually that feature was asked by the customer himself. We were not the one who suggested that feature. They actually asked कि यार मेरी 3 types की requirement होती हैं, can your platform accommodate that? So usually they will not directly tell you what is the feature that you are looking at, but they will tell you the need that they have from your product, and you have to identify what they are looking for and understand that and create a feature within your product which actually solves their problem. So it's all about, I think initial 2 or 3 customers are very critical for the product that you are building, because they are going to be the one who will be taking or giving directions to the direction to the product that you are building. I hope, Bhuvnesh, I have answered your question.
Yeah, that was. Thanks for that.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Bhuvnesh. Yes, Umang, there's a question from Shamali. So, does this MVP factor applicable in designing of a service? If yes, can you explain with an example?
Can you please repeat, Saurabh?
Does this MVP factor applicable in designing of a service?
Okay.
If yes, can you explain with an example?
It is. I think while I was answering Bhuvnesh, I think this was covered, but I'll specifically point out the component which answers this question. I think the product, the MVP that we built at the very initial stage, the service that we defined was for choosing the right facility. We did not talk about making or documenting the requirements well. But I think the feedback that you get from the customers defines in what direction your designing of product should move. If you assume XYZ features, I think that is very wrong, because if you force a feature on a customer, until unless it is properly researched from, let's say, n number of customers, I feel that designing of your services and product has to be basis customer feedback and what is the thing that you're sorting for them. You need to understand if you are adding any feature, is it of any value to the customer, and at the same time, will the customer be willing to pay you for that? So you need to get that feedback directly from the customer. So when you're designing the services, for the customer, you need to, and at the same time, it is very important for you to understand the process of the service that you are offering. I cannot directly comment, and I don't know what services or what products that your company or your startup is going to deal in with. But if I talk in terms of general sense, you need to have a very in-depth understanding of processes, and it is not necessary that within 3 or 4 months or 5 months of your starting of your company that you should have a MVP defined. Because if you are a guy who are not from the industry, it will take a bit of time for you to research and understand the how that industry works, and the solution that you are thinking of bringing in, that can at initial level be a service that you are providing. But from my perspective and my understanding, that if you have to scale it, you will have to productize it.
Okay, Umang.
Yeah.
Okay, so we will take some question answer session. You can continue your presentation, Umang.
Okay. So we have talked about hiring. We have talked about building the product. Now it is all about structuring your marketing and sales. See, I need to be very clear. Sales and marketing are just two aspects of the same coin. You need to understand that marketing brings you leads. Once you convert and qualify those leads, it takes you to sales. So marketing is what will drive your sales funnel, and you need to be very clear about marketing and where to market. So this And this entire strategy of sales and marketing varies from industry to industry. At the same time, if I talk in terms of general sense, for B2B and B2C, things are different. You need to identify, you need to be very clear that to generate leads, you need to market your product in the right avenue. So if you don't market your product well, I don't think so you'll be able to generate any number of leads, even if you spend, let's say, $1 million in marketing, because you need to know where you are investing. So my belief is very simple: your marketing ROI should be positive. And even if you are investing or there is some customer acquisition cost, you should be very clear when you will be able to recover that money which you are invested in that customer, and how. You need to have that clarity. Let's say for a service that you are offering, your spend for a customer acquisition was, let's say, 500 rupees, and let's say on every service you are and your service frequency is around, let's say, a month, and in every service you are earning 300 or 400 rupees. So second service that you offer to that customer will be in the positive, right? So it will generate some profit for you. So you need to have that kind of understanding. And how do you have that understanding is after understanding and creating a marketing process, and qualifying where to present your product. So the first component is that you need to be very clear what your product is, since it's a B2B or it's a B2C. So basis which kind of company you are, your strategy will be different. Second thing is, which is common for both the kind of startups, is that even if you are B2B or B2C, you need to understand where each and every single penny of your penny is being invested in, and which kind of marketing you are investing in. Secondly, optimize your conversion rate. And how do you go about doing it is the sales process. Create a proper sales process. Judge each and every lead, and how relevant those leads are, and is there a mistake which is happening from your end, or the process that you are following, there are some loopholes or issues with the process. Fix it and try to optimize the conversion rate. Because even if you are generating 100 leads and if your conversion rate is not good, then you will be losing out, because every lead cost you. There is a cost that you pay for generating every lead. So you need to be very specific and focused about optimizing the conversion rate. The core component, very important component I was talking about, is where to market your product. You need to be very clear. You need to be very clear where you need to market your product. So I'll give you an example. Edgistify, we created our Instagram page not more than a month back. Reason? That's where I will not be able to find my customer. Our entire focus of building a community has been on LinkedIn. We have never focused on Instagram. We have never focused on any other platform. LinkedIn is the only platform we have been focused upon. And the reason is, my stakeholders, my customers, the stakeholders within my customers organization, or any professional, or any stakeholder is on the LinkedIn. I'm not saying that these guys will not be on Facebook, Instagram, ShareChat, or anywhere, but to reach out to them, I will have to invest a lot to target them or to market them. There has been, and I think you need to actually, for you to understand where you need to market your product, you need to understand your product pretty well, and also understand what your stakeholders are, and where you can actually communicate and engage with them. So this is what I have tried to convey is in a very general sense, in a very general format. But you need to be very clear about your product, and also who your customer are, and where do these customer reach out if they are looking for a service which your product is offering. So you need to ask these questions to yourself. Do brainstorming within the team that you have, with your mentors, with various other stakeholders, with your family, with your friends. But the core is that you need to identify where your consumers are, and you will have to market your product there. So that's it for the sales and marketing slide. Saurabh?
Umang, we will take question in question answer session. We are running out of time. So let's finish
Okay.
the slides. Then we will take up the questions.
Okay. So guys, I think in the entire presentation, I have talked a lot about process, but the reason for that is around my core belief. I think if I have to choose within an organization what to set up first, technology or process, I'll focus on process first. I'll not talk about technology. So that's the kind of guy I am, and I believe uh, actually if you focus on the process first, technology is just implementing the process that you have created. So it also helps you in defining your products, in defining your sales, in defining your marketing strategy, in also defining your operations. And in operations it is very critical. I have not covered operations in this session, reason being this is corely and very majorly focused on product and building MVP and reaching out to customers. So operations come about after that, but at the same time operations should be defined in a way that your operations should be defined in a way so that your all the offerings that you are providing to your customer has to be happy. If customer is happy, he will be going to market your product uh, at to n number of stakeholders. So for B2C, I'm sorry, I'll just talk about marketing for a second more, because I forgot to go cover one point, that is virality of your product. Your product, if it is useful for the customers, they will market your product, and that will be an organic growth. And I think you should focus and target towards building that kind of product in which customers yourself will act as a marketing partner for you, and that too without costing you anything. So you need to be very clear on that, and for that you'll have to research and understand the industry and the product that you are building. That is in itself also a process. It's a continuous process. If you create a process of identifying those features which can be viral and which can be useful for your consumers, I think I think I think you will not require any other marketing if you have a product which in itself markets you. So the process, what is process actually? So let's get back to what this slide talks about. So what is a process? So there are three components to a process. It's about defining steps and decisions. What that is, defining the entire flow chart, the logical flow chart. What happens when, let's say, if it's an yes case, what happens if there is a no from someone, what happens. Then aligning execution timeline. If you have defined a proper timeline, without defining a proper timeline, I don't think so the process is complete. This process is just for the sake of it, for the name of it is a process. Otherwise, if there is no timeline associated with it, it will make no sense. The third and one of the most crucial component is resource allocation. See, you need to also identify, and a process is not complete till you know who is going to do the step that you have defined. Let's say someone is, as I was talking in terms of when I was talking about hiring, you will have to define. Let's say someone is going to call the candidate after the candidate has applied for a role within your organization. So someone has to call. Now you'll have to allocate who is going to call. Without defining that who is going to call, the process is not complete. So for process, these three components are very critical. That is step, decisions, timeline, as well as resource allocation. What are the benefits of defining a process? Easy to scale and identify issue. How does that happen? See, we are talking at a stage in terms of taking you guys from 0 to 1, right? I'm talking and telling you about how to scale or to create a product or create an MVP. But if you want to go from 1 to 100, if you have not set up the processes, I think it is going to be very difficult, and from my perspective, impossible for you to scale. And even if you scale, you are bound to fail. Reason being, you don't have set processes. There will be leakages. There will be issues from the customer side, from the product team, from the technology team. You talk the vertical. You talk about the vertical, and you will face a lot of problems there. And how will you define accountability? How will you define productivity if you don't know the process? If you don't know the steps, I don't think so you'll be able to define even the accountability. That, let's say, if some problem has occurred or some escalation has happened, you will never be able to know who was responsible for that, because if it is not defined who is going to be working on that step, then you don't know who to ask for, why that step has not happened. So to increase productivity and accountability, I think without processes it is not possible. So that's why I told you, even if you raise funds, go up to be a Series A guy, you are bound to fail if you don't set up the processes for each and every vertical. So for a sustainable and for an organization to grow, it is very critical for you to define processes for each and every step. Once you define a process, the benefit that you get, I think Devansh has asked me that question, and I think this is very critical for you as well, Devansh, and for anyone who is building a product. If you create processes, it enhances understanding about the business that you're building. If you have that kind of an understanding for the product, want to have that kind of understanding for the product, you need to create processes for each and every component of the organization that you're working in. That will give you a greater insight into the product, into the industry, into the business. Now you have created a process. It's not enough. If you have created a process, next step and a continuous step is you need to keep on improving. What is relevant now will not be relevant tomorrow. And I think it is very relevant right now if I talk in terms of what is the impact of COVID-19 and how it has impacted each and every organization's working. So you need to understand that what is relevant now will not be relevant tomorrow. So your process has to keep on evolving to match the need of your customers, to match the need of your team, to match the need of each and every vertical of your organization. If you understand that this continuous process, and if you follow that, I think if you have created an offering which is relevant for the customers and they are willing to pay for it, and I'm pretty much sure that you are going to succeed. I don't know when, but you are going to succeed if you have created, if you are focused on creating processes for each and every vertical and identifying issues that you are getting there. Final and foremost is emphasize on automating. Once you have created the process, even if you are doing continuous improvement, that is not the end. You need to identify component of the process which can be automated. If you can identify and pinpoint components which are redundant, you can actually automate them and actually reduce the resource which is required for running that entire component and that entire vertical. As I was giving that example of MHE operations that we did for Reliance Jio, the product that we created enabled only one team member to manage the entire operations for the Reliance vertical, and I'm talking in terms of 165 locations and operations. Now it's a service that we are offering, but the platform, the technology that we built actually enabled us in optimizing the need of resource required for doing it. So as I was talking about process improvement, I also talked about automating, right? So how does this automating of the processes interacts with the technology team? So I think this has become only relevant in the past 15-20 years. Before that, this term of process and automation and all that did not exist before that. So it is about if your tech team and your internal team works around that and understands the processes in a very deep way, I think it will help you in creating something which you even not have visualized a year back or 6 months back, or when you even started thinking about the product or the business that you are building. I'll give you an example of the product that we are building in-house. We are creating an Edgistify operating system. We call it EdgeOS, and each and every component vertical of an organization is a stakeholder on that platform. So there is a backend and there is a front end for each and every vertical. The data that they interact with, the transactions that they interact with are the same, but everyone's front end is different, and the platform ensures that if an information is available within the organization and it is relevant for a separate different vertical, it is visible to them. It will not take even a second for them to get that notification of that information about that transaction, and they will get to know about it. And as I was mentioning very clearly when I was talking about process improvement, if you are looking to optimize resource need in that entire process of, let's say, XYZ component, XYZ vertical, This is the only way. Technology is the key, and if you use tech to your advantage, I think whatever you are building, the kind of investment that you might have projected previously will not be required. So before I end this entire session on process and we get into Q&A, I'll always request anyone who is a budding entrepreneur to, from the very first day, look out for steps, look out for verticals, and try to understand those verticals in a format of a process, in a format of a flow chart, defining timelines, defining resource allocation, and then you will understand the integrate details about each and every component of your business, and that will give you a deep dive understanding into the product that you are building. And at the end of the day, you will not be wasting your resources in creating something which your customer do not require. So I'll end here, and let's get into Q&A. And Saurabh, over to you.
Yes, Umang. Thank you, Umang. Thank you for the presentation. I can see some hand raised. Wait. Vedanti? Vedanti, can you hear me? Vedanti? Okay, I guess. Okay. So there's a question from Arijit that how to calculate how much to spend on marketing. This is a marketing question. Umang?
Can you please repeat?
The question is how to calculate how much to spend on marketing.
Okay. So
Yeah.
So from my perspective, what I understand is that marketing to designate how much to spend in marketing is a business decision that varies from business to business. But as I mentioned while marketing slide, is that if you are getting a positive ROI from the marketing that you are investing, I don't think so there has to be a limit to investment that you are making. If you are investing 100 and you are getting 105, I don't think so there is a possibility for you to stop even investing in the marketing. But in cases where you are acquiring customers, I think that has to align with the targets that you have placed for your organization. How many candidates or how many users you want to onboard on your platform, and align those with those targets, identifying the right avenues for your marketing. I think it is very critical. It is very critical for you to identify right avenues, and if you do that and identify how much you are bleeding from each and every avenue, I think if you align it with your targets, you'll get a right number how much to invest in marketing.
Okay, Umang. So there is a question from Rajat that importance of sales target in a company.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
So
so
his
see,
question
sales.
is very simple.
Yeah. See, target is something which is very critical. I think not only for sales, it is relevant for every vertical. You talk about tech team, you talk about product team, you talk about design team, you talk about operations team, you talk about sales team. For operations, the, the the targets are set on KPIs. In sales, targets are kept on I think revenue and the number of customers that you acquire. So I think targets are something, but at the end of the day, targets have to be realistic and has to be derived by a process rather than creating some random number of a target for your team. So I think targets are very critical, but at the same time they have to be defined in a very and derived from a process rather than whatever you are just thinking about.
Okay, fine. So there's a question from Pranav that B2C companies or startups spend millions in marketing. So what is your opinion on this?
See, that depends, yeah. As I mentioned previously, it depends on the uh, target of an organization, what you are looking at. But for a sustainable business model, some way or the another, your product or your offering has to pay you back, right? And if you want it to pay you back, I think ROI or at least your ROI should tends towards being positive. If it is not tending towards being positive, I think it will not make any sense for you. Saurabh?
Okay. So there's a question from Venkat. How to look for and hire co-founder?
I think you will have to then reach out to areas and components and platforms where networking is happening. You need to look out for guys who are similar minded and culturally aligned with what you are having what you are defining a vision for your organization. And I think passion is something which is very critical. The guy has to be motivated internally. If he is focused and motivated by himself working towards an industry in which you are working towards, or I think there are a lot of platforms. I recently have been receiving a lot of mails from platforms where founders collaborate or founders discuss about the business model, early stage founders, and there you can find a lot of relevant uh, guys who have similar mindset to you.
Okay. Okay, Umang. Hello.
Yeah.
Yes, Umang. So I can't see any hand raised. Also, there is no question left in chat box. So we can end this session.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Hopefully it has been useful for you guys. Over to you, Saurabh. I'll be leaving
Yeah.
now. Okay.
Okay, fine. So it was really a wonderful session, Umang. Thanks, everyone. I hope you have learned something in this session and found it very effective. Actually, we will share this PPT with you guys on email. You can also check the recorded video on Edgistify social media platform. We are available on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube as well. So, and we will also be conducting a few more sessions in the coming weeks. You will receive emails or SMS for upcoming events from our side. So thank you everyone. Thank you once again.